Can everybody hear me?
Sure can.
Awesome. My name is Justine Coates, and I am a technical evangelist for Bing Maps at Microsoft. And I'm here today to show you a little bit about getting started without having to be, let's say, invested. You can try before you buy very easily with Bing Maps. So just to give you a little, whoops. Just to give you a little overview, uh, I'm going to talk about, why you should look at Bing Maps and the sort of the things that we offer, how to try before you buy, and then when you've decided that it's the way to go, how to license the product. And as we had an early conversation, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in whenever works for you. Oops, my apologies. Call from Duluth. The joys of working from home. So why Bing Maps? Honestly, when you think about the history that Microsoft has with Maps, they've shipped a lot of products over the last 20 years that are location aware, and they've been building on that knowledge for quite some time. Now, we started from something like Streets and Trips, where you would install it in your PC and play around with it. But now we have a solution that basically feeds into everything that is location at Microsoft. So how are we hosted? We're hosted in a Microsoft backend, which means we're on worldwide servers, which means we're close to you wherever you are. We have location knowledge. So that the concept being that now, today, we are more aware that data has an amazing amount of context when you throw location into it. So for example, I mean, the simplest example of that is if you're standing in a square and you decide that you want Napoli pizza, you don't want to be directed to restaurant in Napoli, Italy. You want the Italian pizzeria that's closest to you, potentially, with the highest rating. So you're going to want some thought and interest behind the location choices that you're given. Now, Microsoft, as you can imagine, is big into machine learning and AI, and guess what? Location is incredibly important in that space for largely the same reason that I mentioned before. Now, there's some confusion when you use the term Bing Maps. There are the Bing Maps platform, which is what you as developers would use in order to build location aware and mapping applications. But when somebody hears Bing Maps, they think of our consumer site, and that's definitely a powerful experience, and they are essentially our #1 customer. So if you think about the kind of traffic that Bing gets, you got to think about not just showing a map, but also the experience of understanding contextual search results. So basically, every time Bing does a search, they're going to give you location relevant results for the same kind of reason that the pizzeria that I was talking about. You want to know news in your area. You want to know, basically you want that search context to understand where you're coming from, and even as simply to present it to you in your native language based on where you are located. I do actually find it frustrating sometimes that when I go to visit my dad in Costa Rica, the websites all turn into Spanish on me. But that's another story. So back to my spiel. Bing Maps is a worldwide geospatial platform, which means you can count on it to cover the earth as best as we can. Now, to create that worldwide offering, we do partner with other companies in order to build that rich mix of data. So one company might offer really good results or really good data for Japan, we partner with Zenrin, these sort of things, because an American or European-based platform may not have a really good Asian map. So we want to partner with whichever company can give us the best coverage and basically has local relevant knowledge. So, what should you know? Microsoft.com/maps, pardon me, is the best place to start as a developer. That's where you're going to find all of the interesting information about the things that it's capable of, as well as links to our documentation and our support. When you think about what Bing Maps is used for, we're behind search, we're behind ads, we're behind news. We have a staggering amount of throughput. And we have a lot of large companies. So say somebody like Home Depot, they're having a sale on a long weekend. They want to be sure that we can handle that kind of traffic. They don't even put a blip compared to the traffic that Bing does. So if Microsoft can rely on our Bing Maps platform, so can you. Do we have any questions at this point?
So far, nothing.
Okay. Well, now I'm going to tell you how to try it before you buy it. We have an interactive SDK that does allow you to play with the maps before you even get a key. You don't have to do anything. Then we also have in our documentation the concept of understanding how you deal with our transaction model and what you would end up paying for if you went to license our product. There's really great stuff on that, understanding Bing Maps transactions, as well as if you get to that location, right beside it is tips and tricks, right? Bing Maps API's best practices. So with that out of the way, I'm going to show you the interactive SDK. And these are my guidance steps, right? When you decide to use it, try this for yourself, explore the left menu. You're going to find a lot of really interesting stuff. I'm going to start with a really simple demo and then show you a few more fun, challenging things. So let me bring this over. And, oops, right here. And it's as simple as this, getting started. You'll notice that there's an overview on the main page. This is really helpful. You just edit the code and press the little green button and it will do what you told it to. Also, you can try our experimental branch. This is the changes that are up and coming. This is the what's running today. So as a developer, you can play with what's coming down the pipe or what's going to be on your site today. So first step, go to the map. Let's do something simple like place a push pin. And I'm going to set the color of a default push pin. Now this might take a, oh no, there it is. This also kind of gives me away. You'll see that the map is actually located in Vancouver, British Columbia. That's where I am sitting right now. The map will default to whatever location the browser says that you are at. So if you are using a VPN, it will come in and it will plop you wherever that VPN coordinate gives for that for that service. So right now, I'm just going to do something really simple here. I'm going to change the red to blue, and then run. Voila! Wasn't that exciting? So as you can see, it's really easy to start playing with some very simple things here. There are a lot of really fun things you can do with the map map control. You can force it. So this is opening in London with the type Arial, and you'll see that all the controls are here. You can change. You can change any kind of data, and you can pull back data from that map as you need it. Now, one of the most fun things that I like is playing with layers and visualizations. One of the most powerful things that this map control does is it moves between platforms. So this is the same control that you would use in Power BI, the same control that you would use in Excel. So the M365 and O365 offerings with the map control in it use this very same control. Now, you don't have access to all the APIs because it's been managed for you, but really behind the scenes, there is all this power available to you, and especially when you want to add it to your own website or app. Now, let me just go back for a second here. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the industries we support. Now, before I move on, I noticed the last thing on my last slide was, are there any questions on the Interactive SDK? Do you have any?
The chat's pretty quiet.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of people watching, just no one talking. So
Okay.
if anyone's out there and has questions, drop them in the chat.
Don't be afraid. I'm very friendly. I'm highly approachable. I'm Canadian. We're nice people. So, for example, the industries we support are essentially limitless, but we have a lot of customers in these buckets, so I brought them up here. When you think about it, everybody needs location and location relevancy. So, just to give you an idea, these are some of the key ones. So Domino's uses us for pizza delivery and timings. We work with a lot of logistics and delivery companies for the same kind of scenario, but it's a different, what would they call it? A different industry, basically. We have a number of, actually, one of the more fun ones that we have is the idea of dealing with 3D data. So there are a number of competing cell phone companies out there that are putting up new 5G sites, and they need to, it's very important with 5G because it doesn't travel as far, that you place these where they don't have a lot of building shadows. So they're using our 3D data to predict where the best locations for new cell towers would be, for example. So these are things that are outside the traditional, I need to find my closest Home Depot, but that's covered too, right? So moving right along here, because I put a little arrow on the health, I also wanted to highlight our internal pandemic demo that we have that uses the Bing Maps control and was built by Bing to bring in data from multiple public sources and show, you know, the spread. And for that, I'm going to bring this back here. Oops. So I hope you can see this. It might not have great fidelity on over a screen, but anybody can go here. It's bing.com/COVID. You can drill down, you can see some more charts here, but you can really see how the power of maps control. So, for example, I can go and highlight particular regions. Well, look, British Columbia is not doing too badly, and basically drill down wherever I want, right? So my little sister is in New Jersey, so I'm going to check on how it's doing there, how the virus is doing there. And so I'll take a look. She's actually right up here in Hudson County. Wow, those are some pretty big numbers. But you see how I was able to just sort of narrow in where I wanted to go or go globally. And the map is very responsive. So when I took away New Jersey, it went back to the United States and gave me that context. When I take away the United States, it goes back to the world context. So very responsive, very powerful tool and infrastructure. This is essentially receiving GeoJSON data in the back end and does the animation automatically. So with that in mind, I'm going to go back to our interactive SDK, and I'm going to show you some of our visualization layers. We have something called an animated tile layer that you can bring in. This is bringing in data from the Iowa Environmental Mesonet, and you can see how it's bringing the weather data in and just plopping it on a map. I've paid nobody for this. This is a public data source, and I'm putting it on a map. So when you want to go out and buy a weather API or these sort of things, you might find that there's actually a public data source that's available to you if you just do a little searching. So NOAA and a bunch of the other sort of weather and data providers do offer free access to essentially what is government collected data. And with that, I think the last thing I'd like to do is show you the Microsoft.com/maps page. And here is really where you can jump into a number of our different offerings. Now, one of the things that I get asked a lot is, why would I choose Bing Maps over other mapping platforms? Honestly, there are a lot out there, but when you evaluate Bing Maps, you will find that we have more targeted platforms than all of the competition out there. So when you think of a simple scenario like putting a map on a web page, you can get everything started that way. But you can then take that experience and move it onto other platforms. So we have an iOS and Android SDK. We have Windows and UWP. We have a mixed reality SDK, as well as a lot of underlying intelligence that you get to leverage through our APIs. And I'll just run this up here. For here, you can see our documentation, and it also brings you to that concept that I was telling you, that we just have a lot of different ways of dealing with our data. So we have a spatial data service that allows you to leverage our boundaries or upload your own data and use it in a solution so that your data is actually really close to our map. We have the SDKs for Android and iOS, UWP map control, specific REST services. You can call tiles, you can call imagery, you can call routing without even having a map. And then, of course, my demo was the V8 web control. And I think that brings me to, sadly, my last slide. So thank you for listening to me natter on about Bing Maps. And when you're ready to get started, you have my contact information. I'm happy to help anybody. But you can also reach out to, when you're ready to license our product, reach out to maplic@microsoft.com. That's what most of you will do because you're located in the United States. But if you happen to be in Europe or the Middle East or Asia, you could reach out to mapamia@microsoft.com. As I said in the beginning, we're a worldwide geospatial platform. We really focus on being a whole globe. And you'll also notice that when you're calling some of these APIs, you'll be hitting the virtual Earth endpoints. So we really do have that online history that you can count on. And again, so at the last, this is the top, the clock's ticking. Are there any questions?
We'll go and open it up for questions. So if anyone's out there, just drop them in the chat. I'll relay them over. I'll just say from personal experience, it's been a while since I've had to implement maps into any products I've worked on. But I do remember last time I had to work on a project and we had a mapping component of it. We did look at a variety of different mapping solutions out there, and we ended up going with Bing Maps just because the developer experience was far better than any of the other platforms. And I think, and this was years ago, where we were looking at Bing Maps, and Bing Maps might not have had all the bells and whistles at the time that some of the other platforms did, but it did exactly what we needed to. It was easy to read the documentation. It was easy to implement, and we had the full solution done in a couple days. Whereas if we were using one of the other platforms, I'd probably still be reading the documentation because they just didn't build those APIs for developers. And Microsoft just does an amazing job of building tools for developers.
The real key there too, and just what you, like you said, a couple days, that that COVID site, it's been refined a bit, but it doesn't look all that much different than the screenshot I showed, and that was put up in a weekend. So
I have a couple questions coming in, so I'll just toss them at you. The first one is, what's the best way to start learning some of the ins and outs of Bing Maps? Is there a workshop or are there learning modules?
the thing is that it's really not that complicated. You know, you sort of what I would do is you would start based on the solution that you want to make and start learning based on the kind of project that you need to implement. So I would actually if you decided that you needed mapping into a product, I would come here because our documentation walks you through a lot of great stuff. So for example, if you wanted to put Bing Maps into an Android or iOS project, you could go to the docs just like you were saying. The docs actually will walk you right through creating your first project.
Awesome.
And if you're doing the web thing, I mean, did you see this?
Yeah.
Right here, you just cut and paste this code and stick it in your web, and it's already going to be working. I mean, you're going to have to get yourself a key.
Yeah.
But you'll have to set the credentials. We're passing them through on the URL right in our sample, but you would grab this, add the credentials to it, and stick it in your code, and you'll have this exact experience.
There was a question, does Bing Maps support KML overlays?
Oh, well, I'm going to bring this right back. Yes, it does. All right, so data modules, well known. So here we go. Add a geometry connection. So we can take a file coming in that has a polygon and parse it. So yes, it does do well-known things like KML, GeoXML, GeoJSON. So here's some GeoJSON samples right here, pulling in a polygon for South Africa, and then write a shape as GeoJSON, so we can output the GeoJSON as well as here, read a GeoJSON file using JSONP. So this is actually reading from the another public data source, USGS. So these are the earthquakes, and we're representing them with dots. We have another few different overlays that we use this data on, but you'll see. Let's go here, and then of course GeoXML. Create a layer from KML source. So there's we've added a park and some custom roads and some trailheads. So you can see that we can have an ISDK. This is just a sample file that you can actually go take a look at. But it's a GeoXML layout from a KML resource. There you go.
That's awesome. Yeah, the person came back and said that's great. It saves a ton of typing, and you can just reuse your map data everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, the power of this platform is how portable it is. And you know, you could just stop at the web control, because if you're building a website, it will be available on any device that happens to have a browser.
There was a question. Can you talk anything about costs or licensing costs for Bing Maps?
Well, for in general, we actually have thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of non-paying customers, because we give 125,000 transactions per year free. So if your solution is a personal website and you do, let's say, less than 10,000 transactions per month, it's going to cost you nothing. If you want to do more than that, then we have a scaled model, but it's mostly purchased through that MapLick and MapAmia. And what they would do is run through your scenario with you and then find you a price based on your volume of usage.
Gotcha. So if it's just a personal project, it's most likely free forever. But if
I
you're
mean,
doing
yeah,
something,
unless your personal project is somehow going to go over 125,000 transactions. The other thing that people do is if they're going to make a solution and they want to distribute it and they don't want to give the key, they actually tell their customers to sign up for their own key.
gotcha.
So you can actually add it to, you wouldn't do it for a website, for example, but if you're building an application, you can tell your customers, look, go to the Bing portal and create a Bing Maps account and get a key. And then plug it in through this UI and I'll use your key. So that can mean that each of your users would have 125,000 transactions per year.
Yeah, wow, that's a lot. I don't think
It's
I
a
could burn through
lot.
it.
I
Yeah.
know. It's quite amazing.
All right.
Yeah.
Anyone else out there have any questions?
So we do have a number of GitHubs also accessible through the documentation. So when you do decide to go and spelunking and looking for stuff, go to the Microsoft.com/maps and into the documentation, and it will eventually, as you drill down to find samples, it'll get you attached to GitHubs and that sort of thing for. So you're a .NET user group, you'll find those sort of samples in there.
All righty. I think the questions are done for tonight. Is there a good way for people to reach out to you if they want to follow up on anything, or just use the email just as you have on your slide right now?
So those are great for any sort of licensing questions. For me, let me see. I am, gosh, I'm actually, this is great. I'm going to bring this back over here. And I'm going to tell you one of my little secrets. We have MSDN forums. Oh, now you see it?
Everyone close your eyes.
Ah!
Oh,
Doing this to me.
don't you love two-factor auth?
I do.
Hold on. Don't type anything in.
Oh, it's only 4 digits.
Oh, is it? Okay. I was going to say, you're live to the internet. Don't type in your phone number.
Yeah, no. I don't really, they'd still have to have my phone.
Yep. Well, I don't want people calling you in the middle of the night. They figure out what, figure out the other digits.
I really should be using the Authenticator app, but I had a lot of trouble setting it up. So, all right. So you might notice this looks familiar. MSDN is your friend, and the Microsoft Developer Network has Bing Maps forums, and this is a great place to ask questions. There's this person that replies to almost everything called IoTGirl. Guess who that is?
Oh, I have one guess.
So when you have a question, these are really great places to ask it. So if you're doing Windows or web control or any of this sort of stuff, you can ask it in here or just in the general bucket, and it will probably be me that answers it. So for just for giggles here, we also have these sort of guidance here. If you're on a Bing map and you see a data problem, we actually take your data right through the Bing map itself. So let's go here. So we go. And it's funny, because a lot of people reach out to me saying, hey, can I create an issue for this? And it would take longer if you sent me your map problem than if you just did this. So right here, when you're on a map, you'll see at the bottom right-hand corner, there's report a map problem or tell us what you think. So we take direct feedback here. I can tell you on the back end, it drops right into a DevOps. And in that DevOps, there's a bunch of people who read everything based on the classification that you give. So let's report a map problem. You'll choose a problem area, and then you'll tell us, the specific issue. Okay, let's say there's a road problem. What's the problem? Oh, it's missing, and then describe more, right? And then you click send, and it will create an item in our DevOps.
And then you'll personally go fix it.
Yeah, not me. We've got a bunch of map editing elves that do that work.
I'm sure that's a full-time job. I've never thought about the folks that have to maintain the maps.
We have a large set of the thing is that feedback's bigger than that. One of my favorites here is if you just go, let's search for something like, okay, Microsoft. Oops, it's going to take me there, isn't it? Microsoft Bing search. So if you go right here, there's a bunch of really great ways to give feedback. Now, because I didn't choose something that actually has a location, I'm getting the panel to the right here is a description of the thing that I searched for, but it tells me where it got its data from: Wikipedia, Refinitiv, Crunchbase, Bloomberg, and Freebase. So if you have a problem with what's in here, you can either follow up with any of these links to see where the bad data is coming from, and then follow up with the group that owns it, or you can suggest an edit to us right here for this panel. Now, if you don't like something in the search results here, we also have another little feedback bubble here that allows you to tell us, you know, is it a suggestion, a like, or a dislike, and then tell us about it. So you thought there's a team sitting there watching maps. There's a team sitting watching all of this stuff. Bing is actually a really big org. So it's all really outside facing. So when they say that we want feedback, we make it really what we consider to be really easy. Now, you'll notice that I showed you 2 ways to give feedback. I just noticed there's this one too. So you'll notice that I'm a Microsoft employee, and so I have the internal results right here. These are from within my organization. So I can give feedback on my internal intranet results as well.
I think I remember seeing a demo of that at Build, where you could tailor Bing for your internal organizations.
Yeah, it was called Bing for Business, and it's now been called Microsoft Search.
That is super smart.
Yeah.
I love it. I don't have an organization. I have just me, so I don't think I can get a use out of that. But I think folks out
We
there
got
that
a
work
lot
for
of stuff.
larger.
We got a lot of stuff posted in careers if you're looking for work, and with COVID being the way it is, and technology companies letting everybody work from home, you might not have to move.
No.
Yeah.
I did have a question in chat. Have you been working on any interesting IoT projects?
Oh, you want to get me started?
I think we do. So I think whatever is at the top of your head.
So I started at Microsoft in November of 1999 on a project called AutoPC. And I have been making devices up until I moved to Bing. So one of the really neat things that we're doing right now in my team is that we are not only, so the team that creates the product called Bing Maps is also the team that creates the product called Azure Maps. And we are essentially offering some really amazing IoT scenarios through digital twins and Azure IoT. And the thing that I find really funny is I left Windows IoT, Azure IoT to come to this team, and now we've just merged them back in together. So it's like they didn't want me to leave. So yes, there's a lot of really interesting stuff coming along with beacons and indoor mapping, and understanding for the IoT scenarios, a lot of understanding about room occupancy, temperature, maintenance. There was a really great, and this was done many years ago now, but you can look up an article. Where can I find that? You can find an article called 88 Acres. I'm just going to do, oops, a quick. see if I can find it. And it's about the modernizing of Microsoft's campus. And basically, Microsoft used to take 4 years to tune all of its buildings, to visit all of its buildings, and then here it is. Just bring that here. So they took all of the buildings at Microsoft, and they would go in and they would do an HVAC test and run through that building, then move to the next building. And then whenever there was a problem, they would have to run back to a building and whatever. What they did is they did a concerted effort over a number of years to basically IoT all of the campus. So now, rather than having to go at all to any location, what they do is they just look at a dashboard. And they can tell how an HVAC is running at a particular building. And they can tell the status of any building at any time without having to drive there. And they only have to get there, go when there's an alert that comes up. So the amount of work and the response time has been reduced drastically. Anyway, I highly recommend reading the article about 88 acres and turning and modernizing the entire experience of maintaining an 88-acre campus across the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, I'll have to give that a read. That's kind of amazing. You could just look at a dashboard and get a sense of how everything is doing at the same time. That's kind of cool. I remember...
And so I was on the team when Daryl Smith was doing this stuff, and so I went to his work center. It's just incredible.
I love that idea of just kind of knowing if your organization is performing at its top capacity. I know a long time ago I worked on some military contracts, and we were working on an initiative basically to give oversight to the U.S. Naval Fleet. Basically assign it was a model score, so you could look at the entire fleet and see if the fleet was mission ready, and if it wasn't, what exact part of it was not performing to spec, and then you could go fix that one problem. But then you weren't wasting time on things that you didn't need to waste time on. And because, like, I imagine with Microsoft Campus, there's so many places you could waste time and money on. And something like HVAC, if you don't need to go into every building to check out the systems, you don't need to hire the people to go do that. You can allocate that money to other causes. I think that's awesome, especially. But now we have the problem where no one's going into offices. Everyone's saying,
I know.
home. So all that money and investments is just kind of there.
Yeah. Well, so you asked me about IoT. I'm going to tell you the next thing that we're launching for. Oh my God, does that ever look terrible? What happened there? It's just taking a while for the images to come. So right now this is pre-release, but it's just being released this month. We have a lot of people that contact us for because they heard about flight sim using our 3D data and our 3D pipeline. So we're really good to go on having a 3D experience available on all of the controls, except, as you can imagine, the web control. Now, the problem with the web control, and anybody who's done any hardware work will tell you that the web the web browser does not get access to your hardware. So when you want to have a nice 3D experience, you will not be able to leverage the power of your video subsystem from a web browser. So the idea here is that you get a a, a Unity SDK or a Windows SDK or one of these ones that's actually able to touch the hardware acceleration in the video, and then you can take advantage of a lot of the same 3D features we lit up for gaming. Now, right now, what happens is we have what's called a wireframe. So the concept is that if you think of our imagery that we offer for Bing Maps as a blanket, we also have a wireframe that we can drape that blanket over so that everything looks 3D. So for example, the buildings and whatever, when you drop the blanket over top of it, based on the oblique flybys, you get a really nice experience on that UI. But you just can't do it on web. Now, for some strange reason, this picture is not resolving. So I'm going to see if I can do this. Is that gonna, there we go. So you can build, right now, you can use our sample app called Outings. Right now it's designed for a tabletop experience, so because it's really geared for mixed reality. But here's one of those nice GitHub links that I told you might be able to find in here. And then you'll also see that it will run on a number of different platforms. And there's a Get Started guide for the Unity SDK. So in our documentation, you can walk through building your own 3D mixed reality application with map data. So that's super fun. The one caveat is you really do need one of these AR MR headsets in order to really create an experience and try that experience out. I mean, you can obviously create it, but you won't be able to run it without the proper hardware.
So just trying to decipher from the screenshots, when you say it pulls in the mapping data, like I could create a virtual Seattle based off map data.
So it creates the virtual Seattle for you. You
Okay.
basically can plop it on the screen and then interact with it in a number of different ways. But it does have the limitation. So I don't know if you've heard of the game World of Tanks, but they said, hey, we want to use your data and we want to, blast up London. And we're like, that would be really great, except that we have a blanket over a wireframe.
Yeah.
So the problem is that when you bust through that blanket, there's nothing there. So
Well,
we
that's
don't
what
have
tanks
the
do.
ability for modifying the wireframe at this point. It is a feature request, and we will be potentially adding that in the future. But right now, you can't bust the frame. You can, however, put stuff over top of it. So, like, if you're a real estate company and you're building some new buildings, you can place new buildings on top of the wireframe. However, here's the limitation. If you are putting a park where a building was, you can't do that because the wireframe doesn't let you change it.
Gotcha.
When you try to lay the park, it's going to be under the building. So.
Well, I know most of our London friends are probably asleep right now, but I think blowing up London sounds awesome. So let's try to make that technology happen.
Yeah. So we're gonna work on adding that ability. So currently, though, it's not available. And the concept is that Flight Sim really doesn't crash into buildings either.
Yeah.
So wireframe was perfectly fine for them.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't even think about that. You can have a realistic flight from New York or well, say New York to Seattle,
Yep.
and all based off of map data. I was going to
Yep.
say New York to London, but that's all ocean. That's not that's not entertaining at all. But New York to Seattle would be
So
great.
it's really interesting. One of the people that evaluated, and I read a couple articles from people who were evaluating flight sim before it ships. And one of them was a guy who used to live off of the coast of Maine on an island. And he said that they had a little teeny, sort of Cessna style airport. And he used to fly over for pizza from that small island into the bigger airport, pick up pizza and then fly home.
Mm-hmm.
And so he did that as his demo, and he said it was amazing, just like you were talking about. He said you could see the cities around, you have the topography, and they've actually gone into some pretty deep detail on the airports because, like I said, you can wireframe over top. While you can't bust away what's there, you can actually make what's there better. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
So places where you really want deep data, you can actually go in there and sculpt them a little bit more.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Wow. I wish I did more with Unity. I think I would try Unity just to try that. That sounds like a ton of fun.
Yeah, and to be honest though, even if you want to use just the regular Android and iOS SDKs as well as the Windows SDKs, you can get that oblique data and you can get that experience. Let me see if I can show you. Um, Let me know if we run out of time here.
You have as much time as you want.
I'm going to take down my fancy deck here. This is another fun thing to play with. If you want to demo something to your family that that's actually a lot of fun, especially if you have a touch screen, uh, just take the Windows Map app. Come here and go. You can actually go and tip it, right? Now notice it's not very exciting yet, but you see, look, I've already got relief of the mountains around Vancouver. See that?
Oh, yeah. Yep. I
Just
see it.
tipping the regular map. I can also go to aerial mode. Wow, look at that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, I don't know if Vancouver is one of the 3D cities. Maybe it is. Oh, it is actually. I can go here. See these three little dots? There's a nice thing here called 3D cities. And you can go to 3D cities and you can type your favorite city. And as I happen to be in Vancouver, I'm going to have you visit my city. Nice little animation there.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can actually use, like right now I'm not on a touch screen, but you can use 2 fingers to spin this puppy around. You can get down closer to street level and follow along. Now you see it's a little bit rough and it fills in, but
Yeah.
this is the blanket I was telling you about. So what they do is they take that oblique data and they lay it over this wireframe. So it's not perfect, but it's pretty neat either way.
Now I just need a tank. Well, not Vancouver, but we'll pick another city.
Now, see, here's one of the, this is a funny building in Vancouver. It actually has a hole in the center that you walk underneath,
Mm-hmm.
and you see that we don't drape that quite so well
Gotcha.
because of how the plane flies over. But what you can do, and I'm gonna show you how they did this. If you have something iconic that you want to be able to see through, uh, you can actually do the work because the team did this work. You might be familiar with this little building here.
I've been there a couple times.
And so you'll see that when I move, the stuff behind it changes. That's because they came in and they did these cutouts for the tower.
Gotcha.
But essentially, you have to modify the wireframe and go in and tell it, hey, the blanket has some holes here, and we don't have a third-party way of doing that right now. But how nice is this experience? And anybody can do this. You can bring it up on any Windows computer. And since you guys are .NET developers, you get this exact same control when you're doing your .NET app development. So you can actually put this experience into your application without needing any kind of virtual reality headset or anything.
Now, does this view support things like the overlays? So if I wanted to show a 3D view like what we have here and say, all right, what's the directions from the Space Needle to, I don't remember what's near the Space Needle, but pick something down the street.
Yes.
Does overlays work with 3D cities or?
Yes, I believe so. Let's see. Can I do that? Let me try. Starting point. Let's call it Pike Place Market. Destination. Pick directions. Let's see what it does. So there you go. Okay. And then I can tip it. See? So there's my directions.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah. So now I can follow. I can come in here and I can follow that blue line. If I was going to build a mobile app, this might be fun, right?
Yeah.
So I could build a mobile app, have this same control, and walk while I walked. You know what I mean?
That's it. That's exactly what I was thinking. For directions, I'm usually good with road directions, but I'm more landmark based.
Yep.
And having this view, I know driving. I always like, all right, I know it's a 2-story building on my left that I'm looking for. Oh, there it is. Okay, make a left turn. Yeah, I love this.
And
this is great.
Especially for something that has a touch screen, you can actually spin this thing with your hands. You can give it a heading as well. In your code, when you're playing with the control itself, you can say I want it heading this direction, and then it will modify itself. Now, one of the things that's kind of funny is that when the plane flies over, sometimes cars are there and sometimes they aren't. So you'll get these ghost bumps, like where cars were, and then they weren't at some points. So there are still some funny artifacts here, but it is good enough for some pretty fun little scenarios.
That is really cool. That is nifty.
Yeah, these stairs are kind of funky too. You see, anything that sort of got holes in it is a little hard to lay on the blanket.
But it's amazing what you can do with it, and I imagine in the next couple years, the quality is just going to improve exponentially. And
well, so that's the key, right? Is to be able to once you can do the things like the cutouts and the fixing, once I can have once it's not Microsoft that has to do it, but anybody can, that will really, really open it up.
Very cool. Well, Justine, I appreciate you taking us on this tour. I know this was off the script, but I got a ton out of it, and I'm just assuming the rest of the audience got a ton out of it. We really appreciate this.
Now, you do see how when I'm moving this map, how much work that would be for a video processor?
Yeah.
And that's really why it won't work on a website.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, even with the Zoom, it was a little choppy because I'm assuming it's moving very smoothly on your machine, and we're getting the the low frame rate version of it. But
Yes. But that's why, so this is a lot of this, go try this at home, kids, because we have a lot of these things where we offer it. So, for example, if you use LinkedIn on your phone, that's and you're using it to find out how far away a job is from you, uh, that has a Bing map, and it's using the Android control or the iOS control.
well, very cool. Well,
Yeah.
I don't want to take up any more of your time than you've already graciously given to us. The chat's been very quiet, so I think the chat has just been sitting back and enjoying. Um, but we really appreciate this, and I think if people have questions, they'll reach out to you um, in the Bing Maps MSD Insight. Ask any questions. But thank you
Absolutely.
so much for hanging out with us this evening.
Perfect. I'm here to help, and I'm really glad that you invited me.
Yeah, this was a treat. We really appreciate it. Yeah, everyone's chiming in now on the chat saying thank you so much.
Oh, you guys are really welcome, and I really appreciate homegrown groups like this because it really is a really good way to share.
Absolutely. Yeah, because when we all went virtual, I just kind of put a call out and say, all right, I need some amazing speakers to come talk to us because now's the time to just bring in great people to talk about things that we couldn't normally get here back home. And
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because we could have been doing this all the time,
yeah,
and now that we're forced to do it, we realize how powerful it is.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, alrighty. Well, we'll let you go because I'm sure your day is wrapping up now, and folks here on the East Coast probably want to go to bed or at least go eat dinner or hang out with their families or something like that. But thank you again so much for hanging out with us, and
Sure.
everyone watching live. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we'll be back next month with a different topic. But with that, thank you all so much.